Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone here today. Thanks very much for joining us. This is a business-focused webinar with Belfast City Council, and it's a chance for the wider business community here to speak to our elected officials about what's next for our local economy post-lockdown and post-pandemic. We'll also be taking some video questions from our attendees, and time permitting, we'll also try and take a couple of questions from you today, and that's using the chat function on this Zoom call. So we're joined by members of the main political parties which make up the council, alongside Belfast City Council Chief Executive Suzanne Wiley. So the representatives today include Councillor Ronan McLaughlin from Sinn Féin, Alderman George Dorian from DUP, Councillor Eric Hanby, Alliance, Councillor Carl White, SDLP, Councillor Mal O'Hara from the Green Party, and Alderman Sonia Copeland, also Unionist Party, and Councillor John Kyle from the PUP. So first of all, if I could just ask you, starting with Councillor McLaughlin, to give us a quick line on the issue that you see as most pressing for the city's recovery, supporting businesses and the economy, and keeping it short to no more than 1 minute. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, John, and welcome to everyone. Obviously, the decision was taken in March by the executive, and we followed up through the council. And business practically shut down overnight. Currently, we have, I think, statistics showing around 35,000 people on furlough, the job retention scheme by the British government. The problem with that is, at the moment, that is almost propping up the economy. So we're hearing more recently of redundancies coming from the furlough scheme, but we won't actually know the scale of them redundancies until probably around the 31st of October. So we have to try and calculate and future plan the issues that come from that. And everyone has to live with social distancing now. Social distancing is going to be here until there's a vaccine or a cure. We all have to live with it. We all have to queue up in Tesco, Lidl and Asda to get our goods. So that is something that's going to be here for the very foreseeable future. The Office for National Statistics say about 3 out of 4 households have lost income due to the coronavirus. So we have already areas in Belfast with high levels of deprivation, which are going to be the hardest hit to that. And just finally, John, just on all this, in the middle of all this, you do have the Brexit negotiations that are going on. The British government have already said that there won't be an extension. So we still don't have clarity on any future customs arrangements that will be in the north here. So it's all to play for, but it's a very hard time for business, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Alderman Dorian.
Thanks, John. I think probably the key thing is we've come through a very difficult time over the last couple of months. Business has effectively shut down. We've been in a bad place, as Ronan said, in terms of from a personal stories that have been going on. But I also think there's an opportunity now that certainly Belfast, Northern Ireland, we need. Our first priority now has to be getting the economy kick-started, ourselves back to work. Personally, my big thing is around entrepreneurship, that we facilitate that and really get that moving forward. So I think one of the things we should look towards, that we've been fortunate, Belfast, that we have the city deal in place. That's the agreement with ourselves and a number of other councils. So the infrastructure is there that I think we can build upon, that we can take forward. Maybe a lot of the new economy, the new sectors that we have been growing, and getting people from all communities into those sectors, maybe either new or retrained, whatever it may be. But so we have our key economy in terms of retail, or our core economy, there, but also the new sectors moving forward. So I think we need to do all that. But really, it's the work starts now, and I think it's for all of us to work together to do that.
Okay. Councillor Hanby.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. I suppose want to say a little bit about the shorter term. I mean, clearly for us, the priority is the city centre and revitalising that area. You know, the cultural and art sector is a major player in terms of using that to try and attract people in. Really do feel that, you know, they have an important role to play. We need to have are busy, but have, as Roland said, social distancing. So we need to have something there to entertain people who are tuning into the shops. We need to have something that brings people into the city centre in the open air, where it's safe, where the risk from COVID is as low as possible. So that's what we're working towards, revitalising the city centre, getting people in, but doing it safely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor White.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I know you're all busy today with running your businesses and what are difficult times. I'm an SME owner myself, and I've worked in my own business and other businesses since I was 24. There's over 11,000 businesses in Belfast, and I think that we forget that all these businesses are actually vital and critical employers in the city. Be they SMEs, micro businesses are very large, and we're here to help them all. This has been an unprecedented time. I think what Roland said too resonates, is in that we don't really have a feel for where it's going to end up. So we're seeing statistics that are absolutely dismal on the news about GDP. Yet because of the furlough scheme and other schemes, we're not maybe seeing the full effect of that. And there have been people that have fallen through the cracks in the schemes and continue maybe not to have any support. The council, we can't provide any direct support, but what we're doing is refocusing all advice and support services so that the city becomes resilient, and we really look at building an economy that represents and allows everyone here on this call and all people from across the city to participate in it. So I'm looking forward to the call today and looking forward to your questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Hara. I think you might be on mute there, Councillor.
So I was the first person not to unmute myself. Apologies. O'Hara, I'm the Deputy Leader of the Green Party and a Councillor for Castle District Electoral Area. As you imagine, I'm going to talk about the green recovery, and I think there's an emerging consensus that the way to kickstart and stimulate the economy in terms of our recovery is through an injection of a green stimulus, and that's an emerging consensus. In Belfast, we've already undertaken significant work by declaring a climate emergency and establishing a climate unit, which will help our transition across the city to a low carbon economy. Our Climate Commission is established, and we've already been working with partners to move forward that work. And this is a real opportunity for transformation. If we want to see Belfast become a modern European city like many across the continent, with a skilled workforce that has sustainable jobs, disposable income, and an inclusive economy that generates wealth locally, it means that for you as businesses, people will have more money, they'll be spending it locally, and therefore your bottom line will improve. So I really hope that that's one of the key shapers for our recovery going forward.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Copeland. Alderman, maybe muted there.
Sorry, thanks, John.
No problem.
Not to switch on. The hospitality industry has been the backbone of the growing tourism economy, accounting for 60% of the tourism spend. The hospitality sector has been one of the most significantly affected, and this has been acknowledged through various support schemes from the Northern Ireland Housing Exchange. We are indeed in very difficult times, being one of the first to close its doors due to the lockdown, and it'll most likely be the hardest to rebuild. I know there's a lot of desire out there for them to reopen and rebuild, but they may well need ongoing support and partnership with the government to do that. We as a council will give as much help as we can to our pubs and our hotels, and to help them open up and to find it difficult to be able to do that, especially with social distancing. Belfast has been performing well in attracting visitors to the city, and we need to work with the government to see how we can bring those visitors back when it's safe to do so.
Okay. That's grand. Thank you. Thanks. And Councillor Kyle.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everyone. All communities have been scarred by the economic and social impact of COVID, but our young people, especially 4-year-olds, have paid a particularly high price. It has affected them educationally. It has an impact for some on their mental health. It has affected their social development, and it will have repercussions for their future employment. For young men in particular, who often find difficulty staying engaged and connected and motivated with the whole education process, some of them will have become further disconnected, building up greater problems. So in terms of the Council City Recovery Programme, we're providing additional support to primary schools, especially for children at risk. We're looking at our holiday GCSE revision classes, our employability academies. We see how important it is for young people to get vocational guidance. But for many young people to make the connection with the world of work, they do need good training opportunities and work experience. And this is where we see you playing a vital role, where we as a council want to work with you to ensure that this crucial element of engaging young people, drawing them and bridging them into the world of work actually happens for them, particularly in these difficult times.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cal. So thanks for your submissions there. I'd just like to turn now to Chief Executive Suzanne Wiley to give a perspective of what the Council has been doing as it begins to plan for the city's recovery from the pandemic. So pass you over now to Suzanne Wiley.
Hey, thank you very much, John, and delighted that all of you could join us this afternoon here at Belfast City Council from so many different business sectors right across Belfast. And of course, what we're here to do is to hear from you as well, so we can take in your questions so that we understand what we can do to support businesses, to support economic recovery. And I don't need to tell you all the problems you're faced. We have been out talking to you from right across our economic development section, hearing about your issues with your various sectors, whether that's manufacturing, tourism, retail, the cultural sector, social enterprise sectors as well, and the issues you've faced with cash flow, but your worries about longer term recovery as well. And we've all heard the news about job losses and the restructuring that's going to have to happen with various sectors. But today is about being positive and finding real creative and innovative solutions to address those challenges that you're currently facing. So you're going to hear more from our party leaders about the myriad of initiatives that this council has underway to support recovery right across the board, and in particular how we build back better. And you've heard some of that from our party leaders and party members so far. And particularly building in some learning from the last few months, whether that is an accelerated digitisation or whether that's much more active forms of travel that we've all got more used to. So for a few minutes, and if you put slide 2 up, please, I'm going to tell you about the wide-ranging work streams that we are engaged in, which really start from responding to the crisis in March through now to reopening and rebuilding, and then right through into longer term recovery. And you'll have seen that the Economy Minister last week announced the Department's new economic recovery plan for Northern Ireland. And what you'll hear from us here in Belfast City Council very much aligns with that plan, but from a real city focus. And at a city level, we're interested in doing this in a way which supports not only the economy, but also our communities and also the environment, because we haven't forgotten about climate change, as Mal has reminded you. Now, not all of these initiatives are new. We have been working on building our city economy for some time, but we have now accelerated some of these and reprioritised some of them, because we're trying to make Belfast a much more competitive place, sustaining the jobs we have as much as we can, but also creating new jobs and building on our historically low levels of productivity that you've heard about as well. Can you turn to slide 3, please? So just looking at our immediate rebuilding plans, immediate steps that we are taking, we are currently supporting the reopening of businesses across the city. That's in the city centre, but right across our arterial routes and the various centres in neighbourhoods as well. We have a business advice line to give out advice about social distancing, and we have rolled out a confidence building mark for businesses to use, particularly with their customer facing, and particularly in the city centre. And we are doing confidence building campaigns as well for those customer facing businesses. In terms of hospitality and cafes, etc., we have opened an application process today so that we can look at street pavement cafes and the hospitality spilling out into the public realm as well. We've also been working on with DFI to encourage more pedestrianisation and better use of our footpaths and public spaces to allow more mobility, and also looking at more animation in our city centre and more cultural programmes as well, because that's the lifeblood of Belfast. In terms of business support and support for small business, we have been more flexible in terms of our programmes, and we've been carrying out quite a few webinars, and with a particular focus on how we can help businesses digitise more in the coming weeks and months. And of course, in terms of the academies and skills programmes that we run as well, we have reprioritised those. And I know that Visit Belfast and Tourism NI are on the webinar this afternoon. And of course, we've been working with them, looking at local tourism campaigns and building confidence so that whenever we open up again on the 3rd of July, we can ensure that those tourists locally come back again. If you turn to slide 4 then, please. So just to touch on a few things in terms of longer term recovery work. We are working on attracting significant investment into innovation, into research and development, so that we can sustain our resilient clusters of businesses, particularly in technology, particularly in financial technology and health and life sciences and advanced manufacturing, and building on those and making those more competitive. We're also looking at how we can introduce with government a significant green stimulus package with a big focus on clean energy and on clean transport and on retrofitting houses as well. And also calling on government to support a major reskilling programme with a particular focus on digital skills. And we have some levers to help us to do that. And these are just a few that are mentioned on your slide. We do have a Belfast Inclusive Growth Commission that is going to report to government and the newly formed Economic Advisory Group within the next few weeks. And it will ask for early investment in stimulus, some of the things I've just mentioned. We've also recruited a digital commissioner for the city who will focus on the development of our whole smart city agenda with more investment in digital technology across the city, so that we do have competitive advantage, and also that we can create test beds and other incentives, like for example free ports that I think have been mentioned already. We also have the City Deal, which Councillor Dorian mentioned, with key investments in infrastructure, key investments in tourism development as well, in skills development, and in creating centres of excellence for our small business clusters to really excel with the universities and with their research and development. And that is worth a £1 billion investment over the next period of time in our city region. So is a key lever for recovery. And we're also working with 8 councils, 4 in the north and 4 in the south, along the Belfast-Dublin economic corridor, with a real focus on innovation and sectoral strengths and labour movement. And of course, with a big focus on long-term regeneration, particularly in revitalising our city and reimagining what our city and our city centre needs to look like in the future. So I'm going to stop there and hand back to John. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. So just before we hear from you individually, some of the video questions that we have for our councillors today, we're going to just turn to our first live audience poll. So we're just trying to understand and try and work out how many of you are with us today and from what sectors. So there'll be a quick poll question for attendees, and then we'll get a bit of information to see what the kind of breakdown is of those on the event today. Okay, so there we go. It's quite an interesting breakdown. A good sort of mixture, I suppose, of companies. A lot of financial professional services on the list there: education, training, social enterprise, hospitality. Small representation for manufacturing and the construction sector as well. So, but there's quite a wide breadth there of people on the call today. So it's a fairly good example, I suppose, of the breakdown of the economy in general here in Belfast and the wider Northern Ireland economy. So we're going to just turn to our first question from our attendees. And these were basically some centered around business and the city reopening. And we're going to hear from Gary McDonald and Roisin Michalski.
Hello, this is Gary MacDonald of Limitless Insights. Could Belfast City Council use Belfast technology companies to manage customer densities and queue management and help the city businesses return to normal and also at the same time protect their citizens?
Thank you. Roisin Michalski, FSB. With the potential reduction in the number of white-collar workers now going into the city centre with the increase of work-from-home policies with many companies, how will retail and hospitality businesses, particularly those who would rely on the working week footfall, be supported?
Okay, thank you. Just to paraphrase, we're looking at what is the council doing to help and support businesses facing up to the challenges of ensuring health and safety of customers and staff, including the use of technology. And secondly, what is council doing to support businesses facing the impacts of a massively reduced footfall level? We'll turn to Alderman Dorian, followed by Councillor McLaughlin.
Okay, thanks, John. I think certainly in the first part of your question in terms of health and safety, one of the things that the council has been very proactive with and working with businesses and the representative groups is around the whole issue around safety and getting the city open for business again. So I think in terms of the practical measures, we have launched the confidence mark for retailers. There's a programme around the whole cleansing of the city and keeping that really up top mark so that people can visibly see how much is going on around sort of keep transforming the city and keeping it accessible. So well, that's really the principal areas. We've been fortunate of working with the groups and as I say, the individuals really from the outset around this whole matter, because we're aware it's a public health issue. We need to build confidence for the city centre. We want to bring people in, well, to all parts of the city, I should say, to just to build that public confidence. So really, that's really been the big focus. On the second part, there really around people getting people into the city centre. The city centre is already changing. We knew that, and really planning had already been going on. It's probably been accelerated with this happening, but I think around connectivity, bringing people into the city centre, the whole tourism aspect, for example, we've been refocusing that, re-looking at that again. So there will be changes in terms of footfall, and we acknowledge that. And really, that's the area now to concentrate on. But it'll take us working with, I think actually the point to me, it'll take us working with the businesses there, what exactly works for them as well, rather than us trying to put solutions. So I think it's that partnership is the way we'll be doing it.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, John, and thanks, George, and thanks, Gary and Roisin, for their question. Just in regards to more the technology aspect, Gary, the council actually has a Smart Belfast programme. We got an update on it on our last SPNR meeting on Friday there, which basically is set up to encourage government, industry, universities and local businesses to work together on the city's problems, and by using innovative technology. Now, some of you mightn't actually be aware of the Smart Belfast programme. What I would do is encourage you to look it up on our website and ask any questions that you might have on it, because it is a fairly extensive programme that is enabling innovation to occur within the city. As Suzanne said just in her introductory piece, the council have also set up a dedicated helpline for businesses, and this is more to aid you in terms of the reopening of the city. Actually, I have the number for it. It is 028 90 270565. So that's 90270565. And even Suzanne touched on this again, was the digitisation of business. So our economic development unit is working with a number of key businesses across the city in order to try and digitise other the businesses within the city centre and beyond. Although it is acknowledged that that won't be possible for every business. In terms of the practical support that Roisin was talking about, you know, obviously the Department of Finance did institute rates relief until the end of the year for most of the businesses that would straddle that. And George talked about the accelerating change that we want to see. You probably asked a member of Belfast City Council 5 or 10 years ago, what would your ambition be for the city? We would talk about trying to attract the likes of a John Lewis to the city centre. That's no longer the ambition of the city. We understand that retail is going for a hard has numerous problems. The online platforms such as Amazon are eroding the high street. So what we actually done was our community plan, which was the Belfast Agenda. Considering Belfast as a metropolitan city only has around 3,000 people actually living in it. You go to any other European city and it's the main steadfast that people live in the city centres. That doesn't occur in Belfast. So what we've done through the Belfast Agenda is to try and set ambitious targets for the amount of people actually living within the city. So as I said before, currently it stands around 3,000. We want an additional 9,000 people within the city centre boundaries by 2035, which is a fairly ambitious programme. And as you know, like I represent an area in West Belfast which has acute housing stress. So what we want is a mix of social, affordable and private homes to be built in the city centre.
Okay.
And finally, just to try and enable some of that stuff, we have done what we are calling a strategic site assessment, which is all looking at governmental land, whether it be council, any of the Stormont departments that are vacant within the city centre. And we're looking to cluster them together to try and address the sort of cultural, community and housing need within the city. So as George says, this is now a process that's been set in place, but it's now being accelerated through this crisis.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Thank you for your responses there. We'll move on to the next section, which is city regeneration and the reimagining of the city centre. And we're going to hear from Frank Given and Lise McGreevy.
Hello, my name is Frank Given, and my question for the panel is, what opportunities exist to reframe the city centre space into a vehicle-free, leisure, cultural and retail-focused pedestrian zone to bring in different attractions and encourage footfall? Thank you.
Hi, my question is, how will COVID affect the development plans for the Cathedral Quarter, and also what benefits is there for artists in these future plans?
Okay, thanks very much. And just a brief sort of summary there, looking at what the council is doing to bring more people into the city with a focus, I suppose, on more pedestrianisation and more people travelling by bike or on foot, and how the future city development plans, including areas such as Cathedral Quarter, may be impacted by the current situation. So if I could turn to Councillor White and then Councillor Handy. I think you might be muted there, Councillor White.
I think it's a very important question, and I think we've seen since the Primark fire the potential that the city centre has. You know, I'm 40 years old, and my early memories of the city hall are that really was Belfast's main bus terminus and endless queues to get into the city centre, and I think we've seen huge changes since then. But I think we have a long way to go, and the first thing we need to really look at is that we have public confidence to bring people back in to use shops and other places. I was there yesterday and there were a lot of shops open and they were, you know, fairly empty. So I think we've a bit of a journey to go there before people will start coming back in. And that's taking account of the fact that now we're going to see a huge upsurge in digital shopping and digital transactions, which means, you know, in the medium and longer term, we're going to have to really look at what our city centres do. And I think the council are clear that we need to have more people living there. Hospitality industry, the last recession in 2010, it was the industry that bounced back probably quickest. And that was very important from an employment point of view, because it's a flexible industry that can quickly re-employ people who may have lost their jobs. That isn't going to be the case this time. So DFC and DFI and Council have been working. The pavement cafe licensing regime has been launched today, which will make it easier for pubs and restaurants to allow for overspill onto pavements. My own area, Castle, includes Hill Street, and that's now being pedestrianised as well, and that's not the main purpose of these. We're not turning these into Temple Bar type areas, but it will be one of the benefits that pubs, restaurants can actually open out onto these. The other aspect, of course, is travel. I live in Lansdowne, which is about 4 miles from my work, and I've worked out over this last few months. I can now run to work. It's about 4.5 miles. I wouldn't have dreamt of doing that before this, and that's going to cut out a traffic journey of about 40 minutes each way every day. Now, that's going to take a lot of vision. We've got the Minister for Infrastructure. You'll have seen in Belfast and Derry new cycle lanes and new pilot initiatives. She said she's not going to make perfection the enemy of the good, so there will be things that may not work as well as they could have, but I'm excited about her agenda and that agenda which the Council is helping. I think the other point is the importance of staycations. I was involved in a discussion about Belfast Zoo way back in March, and I know even at that stage it was becoming clear that people, we weren't going to be able to travel the way we could before. I'm glad the zoo's opening up now in early July, and I think by working with other organisations, Visit Belfast, Tourism NI and Tourism Ireland, we can see the potential for the staycation market. Newspapers already have adverts from different hotels and resorts across Ireland, so I think that's good news. So yeah, we have we've a lot done, more to do, and I think part of that, calls like today, and it's important that we hear all the ideas that are there and that we engage proactively with those, and really take this opportunity to cement and make sure that the changes that we've made and that we've experienced ourselves aren't reversed. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamby.
Hi, thanks, John. Thanks for the questions. It's crucial that as part of the COVID re-emergence, as such, we need to change the way we use space in the city centre. It's just essential because of the need to queue and the need to allow hospitality businesses to expand out into the street and give us more open air opportunities. So when we're doing this, it is a real opportunity for change, for experiment, to look at ways in which we can use it better. I would ask the sort of businesses in the city centre to embrace this opportunity. Let's see what we can get positively out of it. I think, as I say, particularly for hospitality, we do need to expand. We do need to give them the space in the streets, and that will curtail other uses. I think the other thing that's important, and someone mentioned it already earlier, is making sure we have accessibility, particularly for those with disabilities or impairments, that they can navigate their way through the street. It's done in Europe. they do, you have a clear pathway with perhaps, hospitality on both sides, but there is somewhere for people to walk where they can, do that with ease and comfort. And I think that's important for us. Also, I mentioned earlier in my introduction about the cultural sector, and I think, it is vital, both in terms of actually providing the life and the fun that we like to create in Belfast City Centre, which will, bring people in and make a difference in the numbers that are there and the footfall. But also just generally as part of a lively city, as part of something that we all want to be part of, whether it's going to concerts or art galleries or exhibitions, whatever it might be. It's important for the quality of life and for, as I say, the animation of the city. So we need to support that sector, and Belfast is doing its best to try and work along with that. I would also say to any of you here who are, property owners who perhaps are thinking of delaying development, whatever, artists make great short-term bets. They will do the property, they will quite often do it up in a way that improve it. So do consider that if you can. The other thing, again, that's been touched on here is our longer-term strategy of city centre living. So we do want to change the way the city centre is used. We do want to bring more people into it. But as Ronan says, we do want to make sure that's done sensitively with a mix of housing types and with housing tenure as well. It's not about creating a monoculture within the city. We want a thriving mixed community. So basically, these are the things we're trying to do moving forward with the city centre. We're looking at opportunities for development. We're looking at change in terms of, if offices space is moving out, well, that may be an opportunity to accelerate the living in the city opportunities. I suppose the one thing I would say myself personally to those who are involved in these developments, just a little bit more imagination and quality in terms of time would be appreciated going forward. But we do have a major opportunity here to transform our city centre, to make more approachable, more enjoyable for people to come into, safer, and maybe touch on it later, but also to improve our environment and our health. So those are my thoughts in terms of how we go forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Happy. Okay, we're now on to additional support and financial assistance for businesses here. And we have a question from Anil Sharma.
Hi everyone, my name is Anil Sharma and I am a Joint Managing Director for the company We Rock the Spectrum. My question is split into two parts. What can the Council do through its economic development programs to support companies such as ourselves, trade, export and innovation, etc.? Also, what opportunities are there for the Council to provide or lobby for? Or are there any other financial supports? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And just to summarise very generally, basically what support does the Council put in place to ensure the business community can survive, and what support will there be for businesses in the future? And if we turn to Councillor White, followed by Alderman Copeland.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Anil, for the question. I think it's the question I've been asked most since this all started. It's important to remember that most of the, at a micro level, and by micro I mean individual firms and companies, the financial support there is provided by the Northern Ireland Executive and through those schemes. In terms of what the Council has done, and I have to say I've been impressed by this. Everything has been moved quickly. Support up services for startups, social enterprises, cooperatives, and business growth to virtual delivery models. So people have done that, our staff have done that working from home. There are a lot of challenges here, and we're looking always and constantly to see what they are, and how we can improve. The main one being, how do we bring on a digital business model so you can do run your business online, and if you haven't done that before, that you get help in making that switch. And I know in my own business we've done that, and I know that others have done that, and that's having, again, you're trying and testing things that you've never done because it's necessary. That's something that we want to see more support for, and we'll be working to help with that. I think the main thing we can say is that is a city deal. So city deal before all of this began, a major part of that was digital innovation strand, and that would give Belfast a real competitive advantage compared to other regions and cities. Technology and life sciences are real growth areas in the future here, and more so now than ever. We need to make sure that they do survive and flourish. Just sort of continuing on the way we did before isn't really going to be an option given the challenges that we're going to face here. Last week, Belfast was named as one of the top tech cities of the future. I'm a wee bit dubious of these top 10 things, and sometimes you sort of go, oh, another one. But actually, I think at this time, there is great work being done there, and that does give it the due recognition. And I think Suzanne mentioned earlier the Belfast-Dublin corridor. We're only 100 miles away from a city which is a global tech leader. And hopefully with transport times being cut there over the next decade, we're going to see strengthening of the links between the two cities. And I think that's something that we need to welcome. But again, the Council has been working, all of the services they're there for you to use, they're there to provide support. I have fed a lot of support services through to businesses in my area in North Belfast, and I think that anyone who hasn't taken advantage of those, or who wants to just pick up the phone and speak to someone in the Council, just to make sure you're getting every piece of support that you can get, during this, it's absolutely critical you do that, and there's people there who are going to give you advice and support that you need.
Thank you. Alderman Copeland.
Thank you, Anil. We know Northern Ireland Executive has responded quickly with a range of supports, and that many businesses did benefit from it. So, for instance, the furloughing has helped, and the Economy Minister has set out a road to recovery, which outlines a 12-point plan to enable the industry to get back onto its feet again, albeit the decisions to reopen businesses should be based on how safe it is for the business to open and to ensure that it's sustainable under social distancing rules. However, we do recognise that there have been gaps in the offer, for especially parents whose children are at school and now need to do the childcare themselves. So there's more work needs to be done on that. We have lobbied the relevant ministers to consider extending some of the reliefs to help businesses to get back up and running. And in fact, this week we're meeting with the Economy Minister, and we will press on the need for additional support for small businesses in particular. It has been important for us to engage with all sectors of the business community and to make sure that nobody is inadvertently left out of the council's plans, and that the support being provided is being directed to the business sectors who really need it. And in fact, over the last number of weeks, our party's economy spokesperson, John Stewart, has taken a lot of calls from businesses in the social enterprise sector who need help. Everybody needs to be involved in the discussions for the way forward, and we really need to be thinking outside the box.
Okay, thanks very much, Alderman Copeland. We're now just moving on to a slightly different area. We're now looking at social enterprises and the support for social enterprises here. And we have a question from Maeve Monaghan.
Bigger isn't always better. Our city lacks personality. How can council ensure that social enterprises and local artisan businesses are a valued part of any revival?
Okay, thank you. So what is the council doing to support the social enterprise and the cooperative sector at this time? And what role do you see the sector having in terms of supporting the longer term recovery of the city? And if we could turn to Councillor McLaughlin, followed by Councillor Kyle.
Thank you, John, and thanks, Maeve, for the question. And just on a wee side note, I really enjoy the jam card scheme that the NI Group employ in just a minute. So if any businesses don't know about that, I would encourage you to look that up. It's a very good scheme which helps Belfast become a more inclusive city. So any retailers out there that don't know what I'm talking about, please contact the NI Group just in regards to that jam card. I think everyone acknowledges that cities need personality. Grey spaces are no longer acceptable. And I think Belfast and its citizens, more importantly, have a big personality, and that should be reflected in our city centre. The problem is that there is gaps within governmental support, and the social enterprise sector have been a victim almost of gaps within that. We have seen the DFC launch a £15.5 million fund just in relation to the charity sector. But we do need to push the relevant ministers in order to get social enterprises with charitable status the funding that they require. That is still a big, massive gap. And so is the sole trader status as well, still a big gap within the governmental support. Now, according to the various forms of researches, social enterprise sector employ around 50% of their staff from the local locality in which the social enterprise is based. I'm fortunate enough to live in West Belfast, and we have a thriving social enterprise sector down through Ortis, and its Chief Executive, Seamus O'Prey, does a fantastic job in revitalising parts of West Belfast. And a pet hate of mine of social enterprises is that it's always coupled with cooperatives, even within the council, and Councillor O'Hara will probably know this as well during our committee meetings in City Growth and Regeneration. Always social enterprises and cooperatives are coupled together, when in reality they're completely two separate they're completely two separate models of business, and they need to be decoupled. But what we're doing practically within the council is, we have launched a recent draft on our inclusive growth strategy. You've heard our Chief Executive, Suzanne Wiley, talk about our Inclusive Growth Commission. And what that lays out is trying to fundamentally decouple the cooperative and social enterprise and provide support for them. We do have written within it is a social enterprise action plan, which will last 4 years. So all that is starting to be in exploration now. So, and probably finally on it, and it's really important within the inclusive growth strategy, is the social value procurement. Because procurement for social enterprises and cooperatives is very difficult. Very often when procurement work goes out, it's always to the cheapest tender, and very often that cheapest tender will then subcontract that piece of work. So we're looking at all that on the round. I would encourage any of the social enterprise or cooperatives who are with us today, just have a read of our inclusive growth strategy. And of course, you can contact me or anyone else after this.
Okay. Councillor Cat.
And thank you, John, and thank you, Maeve, for the question. As Ronan said, we see the social enterprise sector and cooperatives as being a vital part of the city's recovery from the impact of COVID-19, and in particular as being an important player in creating inclusive growth, so that all communities and all sectors of society benefit from the recovery. We recognise how the social enterprise sector has been a vibrant sector and has been growing, expanding in the 5 years from 2013 to 2018. The employment base doubled from 12,000 to almost 25,000. So it has been a vibrant and energetic part of our economy, and it is an important part. We've had a dedicated programme of support for social enterprises and cooperatives. In the course of that programme, we've created 100 jobs, and we've helped to secure over £800,000 in additional funding for the sector. So we see it as being important. But we also see it as being, as Rona said, disproportionately affected by some of the by the fact that it hasn't benefited from some of the measures that central government have taken. So we have wanted to proactively engage with the sector, with stakeholders, to understand from them what the key issues are, and to try and then shape our response to establish what we as a council can do to help alleviate some of those problems. And cash flow seems to be one of the biggest worries that the sector faces. A survey in April by Social Enterprise NI identified that only 9% of members were eligible for the grant support available at the time. So that highlights the real issue that's there. And 81% of those surveyed said that they were not sure that they would be able to survive beyond the summer. So there's an urgency about this. So as a result of that, and with our engagement with the sector, we do want to enhance what we're doing. We want to offer some element of financial support to the organisations that engage with us through our dedicated programme. The model will be tapered and tailored so that it will address the needs of each organisation that we engage with to help them mitigate the effects of COVID-19. We've also been working closely with Social Enterprise NI and cooperative alternatives to see what we can do with them and help to support them and to develop the existing packages of support that there are there. And as Ronan said, we do emphasise the social value procurement framework and policy that we're developing. We do want, when it comes to procurement, we want to see those who tender for them explain how they can add social value to the work that they're doing, so that communities benefit. It may be offering employment to local people, it may be embedding themselves in local community, it may be helping to shape community space, public space. But we are looking for this added social value in our procurement policy that will really benefit not just the city as a whole, but the communities in which the developments take place or the work is done.
Okay, much appreciated. Thank you for your contribution. We're now looking at the employability and skills among adults and young people as well, but I suppose with the focus on young people at the moment. So we're taking a question from Fergal Collins.
Good afternoon, panel. My name is Fergal Collins. I'm representing Building Services Academy, a community-based training organisation located in the Collin area of West Belfast. We provide electrical and plumbing apprenticeship training to up to 70 young people in our area. My question today is, what is the Council planning to do to support the many individuals who are facing unemployment in the coming months, our young people and also our adults? Many thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Fergal. So in summary, it's obviously a big talking point among everyone at the moment. How is the Council working to help the many thousands of people, particularly young people, who may struggle to get a job over the coming months and years ahead? If I turn to Alderman Copeland, followed by Alderman Dorian, and we just keep it quite tight, that would be great.
Thank you, Fergal. It's quite a big subject. I'll keep it tight, let me tell you. Over the past number of years, the Council has been increasing the work that we do in this area, and we've been focusing on those furthest from the labour market. We know that the picture will have significantly changed over this past 3 months, with the claimant count almost doubling in Belfast and over 36,000 workers on furlough. We know there will be certain groups that are going to be most adversely affected, and that's being the young people, people who've been economically inactive for some time, and people with low skills. It's important to know that Council isn't on its own. It doesn't own economic levers to provide all the support that is needed, and we need to work jointly with the Executive and the Assembly to chart a way forward. One can't work without the other, basically. So as a Council, we need to be involved directly with the Executive in formulating the economic plans for the future. That will not only help rebuild our economy, but it will also provide employment opportunities which our young people need now and in the future. Young people need to be the focus for all of us. Belfast is a young city, and we need to make sure that we give our young people ambition and can support them to access fulfilling training and employment opportunities. We had invested a programme to address education underachievement across the city, and we know we need to scale this up, particularly given that young people have missed out on at least 3 months education in classroom. Only last week in Good Morning Ulster, several young people were interviewed, and during their interview, it was revealed that in the Youth Forum survey, 20% of young people cite unemployment as a massive issue. I would be encouraging the Economy Minister and her department to think creatively in the coming weeks. We don't want our young people to become a forgotten generation. So as a Council, we're working with the private sector to see how they can support our ambitions for inclusive growth in Belfast. And this might include things like targeted activities to support those at risk. For example, reskilling programs, training incentives, meaningful work placements. So we've also developed a city charter in conjunction with the employers to agree on how to work together collectively to support and an inclusive city, so that we collectively address the needs within our neighbourhoods. So for instance, educational attainment, mental health and digital connectivity. I know this week alone I've spoken to adults who are just over 50 who have been furloughed, and they're literally worried sick that they won't have a job to go back to, and how would they get back onto the job market at their age. So we need to be looking seriously at reskilling those who do lose their job.
Okay, Alderman Dorian, if you could just keep it as brief as possible, that would be great.
Yeah, surely. I'll not repeat the things that Sonia said, but just it's a couple of key points that I'd like to make. We have the academies out there which are sort of looking at all the key areas that we want. I think there's a role to be expanding them. Going forward, the other thing, and sometimes I know I sound like a broken record sometimes saying this, but there's a much greater role for self-employment and entrepreneurship in communities and amongst those who maybe it's due to, for whatever reason, they've a new start in life. So that's an area that I really do think that we should be pushing much harder on and trying to bring people out. The last point, so I'll just make, is around, goes back to technology again. There is so many people who don't realise the skills they already have around technology and the knowledge they have, even daily use of their phones and their iPads and the like, how they can actually convert those into work skills and how we can get them into streams towards technology and digital. And really those growth sectors, how we can best get that. That's something that really we need to focus on as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And our final submission question is looking at the green recovery, air quality and sustainability overall. So if I could hear from Elaine Kerr and Matt Johnston.
How does the panel view the development of a green recovery for Northern Ireland, and what do you consider the key motivators?
What can the city do to improve air quality in the city? Air quality has improved during COVID. Are we going to now lose that?
Okay, so just to summarise, we are looking at, I suppose, how important does the council see the role of sustainability, the environmental impact, air quality, climate and the environment in general to be part of the city's recovery going forward, and what is the council going to do to progress with this? If I could turn to Councillor O'Hara, followed by Councillor Hamby. Thanks.
Thanks, John, and thanks for the questions, Elaine and Liam. I don't need to explain the climate risk. This is a coastal city. We know what the challenges are and the dangers if we don't adapt and mitigate in preparation for it. We also know about our poor housing stock and energy bills and energy lost in the city because of that. The climate crisis was a priority for this council, and it will be, and it's how we integrate that into the recovery phase. Amid all the tragedy and travesty related to COVID, I think there's certainly things that we can pull out of that, which we can maybe embed in our future going forward. I'm particularly thinking about working from home, and that gives some questions to us in Belfast in terms of our Belfast agenda priority about creating office space in the city. What is the need and demand for office space going to be, and how do we re-profile that, and what can we use that space for instead, if appropriate? And I think the ambition to have more people living in the city is certainly one that can be complementary to that. One of the other great things that we've seen in the response to COVID was community activism, and we want to make sure that we're not leading communities on this, that we're actually co-designing and bringing communities with us, and we're designing that trajectory going forward. And I think the other thing is that people reprioritise what was important to them, and that's around family and community and taking the good out of life, and maybe some of the slower pace was welcomed. We have established the Climate Commission, which I talked about earlier, and it'll be developing our plan for adaptation and mitigation, and we hope to have that ready next summer. And that's the establishment of a climate unit in Belfast for the first time, and a team of staff with a budget who are going to be working to do that, and we really need city partners to engage with that. There will be challenges around how we move to sustainable transport. Belfast has been built for cars and the private vehicle, and there are real challenges about how we get around that and how we change culture at that, and I think we need to establish a consensus. One of the key elements of our recovery is going to be an ambition for housing retrofit, working with the Department for Communities, Housing, Executive Housing Associations and private developers. And that's an opportunity, and some of the stuff Sonia's just been talking about around young people and providing skilled jobs which are sustainable and which give people disposable wealth and a good quality of life. Some of the other work we've been doing is in terms of the strategic sites assessment, looking at key areas across the city that are owned by council or other government departments, and looking at how we can fulfil our ambition for the 1 million trees project across the city. So lots of opportunities, lots of challenges, and I know some questions come in around inclusive growth, and I think Ryan Roland has already talked about the ambition that we have at council to see that we use community wealth building models to ensure that we have social value and inclusive growth in the city as part of a just green recovery.
Okay, Councillor Hamby.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I suppose I just wanted to say, I mean, air quality is crucial in the city. I mean, I don't want to start sort of banding around scare numbers, but we do know that people die because of air pollution. We know it's a major cause in urban areas, and we need to deal with that, as well as the wider climate implications, which we just can't keep ignoring. But there are specific reasons we need to deal with this now. The other thing I would say is, I mean, in terms of pollution in the city, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We're talking about transport. It is cars, it is buses, it is vehicles coming into the city, and that is where the major source of pollution is coming from. So that is what we need to tackle. I mean, I think we've seen it already. I mean, Carl alluded to it earlier in terms of his own choice in running into the city. We see so many people have taken up cycling over this period, you know, because the roads are emptier, because it's safer, and, you know, they build them and they will come. People have, you know, got out, have used alternative transport, and we need to encourage that, and we need to keep moving in that direction. I mean, one thing I would say to those in the city centre and so on, the way our infrastructure is developing at the moment, or has developed to now, we very much tended to push pedestrians, those who are out walking for leisure and so on, and cyclists out of the city centre. So you have thousands of people going up and down the towpath, up and down, you know, the river, and they don't come anywhere near the city centre because there's no reason for them to. So we should be building infrastructure for economic development, which takes them through the city centre, which gives them a reason to go in there, which gives them opportunities then to stop, have a coffee, do some shopping, whatever it might be. And at the moment, we're completely missing those opportunities. So I think, you know, we need to look at that going forward. This is, again, an opportunity. We've seen in other cities. I mean, it makes a major difference. And very few that have done it, if any, in fact, that I'm aware of, want to go back. Once people see what things can be when they've changed, they don't want to go back to cars blocking up all the streets. I was in Amsterdam recently myself, and it's just so relaxing to walk around a city that isn't dominated by the car. It really makes a massive difference. I mean, another thing I would say is, just to finish off, in terms of the council itself is aware that we pollute, we are involved in driving vehicles around the city, and we're looking at how we deal with that within our own infrastructure and our own. But generally, I think longer term, you know, we look at the type of vehicles that come into the city centre. Yes, we know we do need lorries coming in, we need stuff coming in, but, you know, can we switch to electric power? What can we do in terms of changing the patterns in the city? So those are my thoughts in terms of how we take it forward. I know some people will find those challenging, but I think this is an opportunity that we need to take.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harvey, and thank you for everyone's responses so far. Time-wise, time permitting, we're running a wee bit slightly behind, so we may not have time to take a direct question. We have some submissions from our attendees today, and all of the questions are submitted will be answered after the webinar. So if there are questions that haven't been addressed as yet, you will get a response at some stage quite soon. We're just going to take an audience poll here at the end, just taking a bit of feedback, and just looking at the topics discussed today. What do you think are the most important issues for the council to focus on as we move forward in recovery? So if you could like to vote on that, we can get an idea of where you stand.
Chair, I have to pull out now, okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor White.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, fairly mixed response there, quite a few responses as well. So city reopening, reimagining and regeneration are all roughly the same. Economic development is the most pressing issue there. But a fairly wide swathe there as well. Green recovery is also important, employability and social supporting social enterprises, but definitely a focus there on the economic rejuvenation and the reopening of the city would be the most important elements from most of our attendees here today. So we're coming to a close at the moment. I'm just going to turn to Chief Executive Suzanne Wiley just to highlight the next steps that the Council has taken.
Okay, thank you very much everybody for your participation. Very much appreciate it. And I've been trying to answer some of the questions, haven't got to all of them because it was impossible for me to do that, but we absolutely will answer those and get in touch with those people who wanted more information after this webinar. So just to give you some reassurance, in terms of our strategy, we are working with government departments and we are working with InvestNI, and we do want it to be a very joined up approach to recovery. It's absolutely essential for a city the size and scale of Belfast with the challenges that we're going to face over this next period of time. And of course, we're trying to utilise all of the levers that are available to us and tools that are available to us. And you heard the wide range of things that we're focused on. And I know there were a lot of questions about community wealth building and community wealth building hubs, and ranging right up to how we're going to invest more in digital infrastructure across the city. So you can see here in terms of some of our next steps, we will publish a recovery plan for the city. And we will continue to engage with you as businesses in doing that. So we're going to put it out fairly soon in July, but it will be an iterative plan. So we will have to improve on that. We will continue as time goes on, and we will continue to provide business advice and support, and some really good suggestions there about sectoral guidance that we need to put in place for individual business types as well. So we will look at that going forward. And of course, we will still lobby government in terms of incentives for business, and that includes fiscal incentives too. Our Inclusive Growth Commission will report to the departments in July as well, as you have heard. Our city centre and all of the revitalisation, reimagining of the city centre, we do have a document which has been out for consultation called our Bolder Vision, which does imagine a much more pedestrianised city centre and much more active forms of travel and transport and less congestion into the city. So we are looking to both DFI and DFC to work with us on that Bolder Vision. And of course, in terms of investment in research and development and in growing our sectoral strengths and business clusters and our new reskilling programmes, we do have our digital innovation plan, which will be out for consultation very soon. And then our city deal, so that £1 billion of investment, and we hope that money will start to flow for those projects in April of next year, and that we will roll them out over the next 5-year period. So lots to do, and this council is absolutely committed that the city will bounce back, and it will bounce back in a very inclusive way. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. So that brings the proceedings to an end. Just once again, thanks to everyone from across the Belfast business community for getting involved today, for sending in your questions, obviously, as well. Our elected officials and Chief Executive, Suzanne Wiley. So once again, thanks very much for your time.